No scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm, please leave the building via the spiral staircase and the main reception door. Once outside, turn left onto Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, you will be guided to the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel. The comment function is not available. The Council is a data controller and will retain the data collected during the webcast in accordance with its data retention policy. Anyone seated in a public gallery should be aware that by entering the room, you are consenting to your image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting or training purposes. The meeting agenda is available on the Council's website. Around this table sit the committee members who will be taking decisions on the item before them. Officers of the Council are also in attendance, and I invite them to introduce themselves now.
Good evening, I'm Jess Tamplin, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, I'm Siraj Chowdhury, Head of Governance.
Good evening, I'm Jean McPherson, I'm the Group Manager.
Good evening, I'm Alex Sanders, Acting Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We haven't received any apologies.
Thank you. Item 2 is disclosures of interest, and item 3 is lobbying declarations, which I will now pass over to Jess. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be calling committee members' names one by one, so please declare if you have any interests, any lobbying, or if you have visited any of the sites. Councillor Abu Musa.
Good evening. I haven't visited any site. No declaration of interest. I haven't been lobbied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashraf.
Hi. I have no interest to declare and haven't visited any of the sites, but I have been approached few of the local businesses and residents about these site. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bidwell.
Thank you. Good evening. I have no interest to declare. However, I have been lobbied and have visited the sites for item 5.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you. I have been lobbied on agenda item 5, and I will declare 2 personal non-prejudicial interests. Firstly, on agenda items 5 and 6 as a member of West Sussex County Council, and then on agenda item 5, perhaps a little bit of an unusual one. I want to declare that I shared a Facebook post of an objector to this application, although my intention was just to raise awareness rather than supporting or making any indication that I was supporting the objector. And I did actually make in the post that I said, we have to keep an open mind. That actually did state, but I was advised that I should delete that post and also declare that this has happened by a senior officer. And I will also state as well that the objector, the name of the business happened to share my surname as well, and therefore an association could be made that I had an interest or indeed a controlling interest in that firm, which I do not. Okay, thank you.
That will be noted in the minutes. Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Good evening. I've got non-prejudicial interest in item 6. I have been lobbied on item 6 and item 5, and I have visited the site for item 6.
Thank you. Could I ask a detail of your non-prejudicial interest in item 6, please?
Both myself and all my children went to St Wilfrid School.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Good evening, everybody. I have no interest to declare. I have been lobbied on application CR 2022-0447, item 5 on the agenda, and I have carried out a site visit there as well, officer-led site visit last Thursday.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I have been lobbied on item 5. I did an officer-led site visit on item 5, and I've also visited item 7.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Good evening, everyone. I have no interest to declare. I wasn't able to make the site visit, so I have done no site visits. But I have been emailed on, so lobbied on item 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgale.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I have been lobbied on item 5. I have visited the site, but not officer-led.
That's the site for item 5?
Yeah, item 5.
Thank you.
Can I just mention, I am very familiar with the site at item 7 because I live very close to it and it's on my way to the railway station. So I pass it on a regular basis.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I haven't visited the sites, but I have been lobbied on agenda item 5. Thank you.
Councillor Yanni.
Good evening. I have an, well, I don't know what you call it, a non-political interest in item 6 because I went to that school. But other than that, I have no other interest or lobbying to declare.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And Councillor Rana, finally.
Thank you. I haven't got no interest to declare. I have not visited the site, but I'm very familiar with the site, and I have been lobbied on item 5. Thank you. So item number 4 is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting held on 7th July 2025. Does the committee agree that the minutes are an accurate record of a meeting? Thank you. So we will now move on to agenda item 5, planning application CR/2022/044/FUL-629 Ifield Road, West Green. Please can the planning officer introduce the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As introduced, this is an application for number 629 Ifield Road in West Green. Since the report was prepared, 3 further representations have been received. I think they've all been addressed to the Planning Committee. Those additional representations have been placed on the published on the application website on receipt. So there was one on the 19th of August, one on the 20th, and one on the 21st. In this case, I intend to present and explain this application first, and after we'll cover off the new issues arising from these representations where they aren't already explained within the committee report. So as you'll see from the photograph behind me, and I hope people can see the photograph behind, the application property relates to 629 Ifield Road. So the red edge on the plan indicates the extent of the application site, and as you'll see, it's located on the southern side of Ifield Road. To the west of it is number 10 Ifield Road, which is a Grade 2 listed building and a residential property. To the south, we have the car park of Gainsborough House, which occupies the junction of Pegler Way and the High Street. To the east is Road Radio, number 5, and these are the rear service yards of the properties along or fronting onto the High Street and to the first few numbers in Ifield Road. The George Hotel and the grounds of the George Hotel are to the north of the property on the opposite side of Ifield Road. The site is in a busy town centre location within the town centre and the High Street conservation area. And just a couple of further photographs of the site here. So members get an idea of the context. So this is looking back sort of southeastwards towards the High Street in the background, over on the left-hand side of the picture. You'll see the end of Ifield Road and the building on the right-hand side. We've got Road Radio here, the High Street, and the businesses in the end of Ifield Road. The building is actually in two parts. Not so clear from this angle, but these two gables are actually on separate sort of plots, if you like, and the link between it is at first and second floor level, and there's a route through to the rear garden or the rear yard area, and the photograph on the right-hand side is a view of the rear yard. So the building is 2.5 stories high and in two parts. So it's joined at first floor level by this glazed link. Let's put that one back up. And it was constructed as an office, the glazed link originally providing access to the parking area to the rear. Now, planning permission here is sought for the change of use of the building from a 27-bedroom HMO, house in multiple occupation, with a maximum of 36 occupants, to a hostel with a maximum of 68 occupants. In planning terms, both uses are classified as sui generis, which in Latin is the meaning of their own kind. So in planning terms, this means that both uses are unique and do not fall within any defined planning use class. In terms of changes, there are no physical changes proposed to the exterior of the building. In order to meet the operational requirements of the proposed increase in occupancy, additional bin storage and covered cycle store is proposed to be provided in the rear yard area. No parking provision is proposed for the site. Of relevance is the planning history for this building, which changed the use from an office to a 27-bedroom house in multiple occupation with extensions and alterations under an application that was submitted in 2015. And that planning permission was implemented and the building was refurbished at this time and the HMO use commenced. A limit on the number of occupants was set at 36 at that point in time. At the time the current application to be considered this evening was submitted back in 2022, the building was still in use as an HMO run by a private owner. But since the application was submitted, the building has changed hands and is now owned by Crawley Borough Council. This application is retrospective in part as the building is now managed as a hostel occupied by a maximum of 36 residents. 9 of the bedrooms within the building are currently unoccupied. Just show you some floor plans. Oops, go the other way. This is a ground floor plan. So as I've said, it's a change of use only. There are no new bedrooms or extensions or alterations as a result of the application. It's seeking to regularise the hostel use and increase the building occupancy to a maximum of 68 occupants, by including more beds within each room and thereby allowing the hostel space to accommodate families on a temporary basis. So this is the proposed floor plan. And you see, say in room 4, if I just enlarge it a bit, the front, there's a bedroom being accommodated there. Again, some of these rooms that perhaps were singles in the previous house in multiple occupation now have 2 bed spaces, or in some cases 3 or 4. So the number of beds in each room has been increased. And that applies for every floor. So if I go to the top floor, for example, some of these rooms, which perhaps were 2-person, are now for 4. Maybe this was a single one and it's now for 2. So the bed spaces have been increased. The relevant policies are set out in section 4 of the officer's report and the planning considerations in section 5, which I'll deal with very briefly in turn. So in terms of the principle of the use of the proposal is for a building to be used as a council hostel to provide temporary accommodation to residents in need within Crawley Borough. And to be clear, this is not an asylum hostel, which is operated differently, and in Crawley is within hotel accommodation operated by the Home Office. The building has been in residential occupation since it was converted under the 2015 permission. So in planning terms, there's no conflict with the town centre policies in terms of loss of employment floor space. Both the former house in multiple occupation use and the hostel use have similar characteristics in that they provide residential accommodation in the town centre. The hostel use, however, has a greater level of management and supervision of its occupants, and in planning terms, the use is considered acceptable in principle. Turning to the amenities of nearby properties, as stated earlier, there's no change to the appearance of the building, so the physical relationship of the site to its surrounding environment is unchanged. The level of occupancy within the building would, however, increase. However, it's not considered that level of occupancy would be harmful to the amenities of surrounding areas, as the building is in use by a hostel by residents, is not noise generating. Residents would arrive at the site on foot or bicycle, as no vehicle parking is provided here. While there would be potentially higher number of occupants in each room, there is no evidence this would result in more noise from the building. As stated earlier, this sort of use is more actively managed than a HMO. In terms of parking and services, as I've said, there's no parking provided for the site. However, officers consider the site is highly accessible location, close to the town centre, public transport and nearby amenities, and Orchard Street car park is close by. West Sussex Highways have no objection, subject to a secure covered cycle spaces being provided, and indicatively they're shown in the rear garden area. And there's space within the rear service area for the cycles and for the increased refuse provision that's sought. In terms of the impact on visual amenity and heritage assets, these are considered in sections 513 and to 516 of the officers' report. As I said, the building's unaltered, and the refuse and cycle provision would be away from public views of the conservation area, and those details would be controlled through planning conditions. In addition, to meet the requirements of policy G13 in respect of biodiversity through the urban greening factor, the applicant has agreed to landscape the site to secure a biodiversity enhancement. And while the location of those enhancements is not yet agreed, all landscaping would be seen as a positive addition to the appearance of the site and the conservation area. In respect of the adequacy of the accommodation, the report is clear the accommodation could accommodate up to 68 bed spaces. It's been confirmed that this would be family groups that would be sole occupants in each room. The rooms have cooking facilities but share washing facilities. The committee should remember that the purpose of this hostel is temporary accommodation, and therefore the level of accommodation is not required to be the same standard as a HMO or a small dwelling. The building itself was extensively renovated around 2015 when it was converted to a HMO. So, as set out in the report, is sustainable in terms of energy efficiency as it meets the current building regulation standards. Finally, in respect of water neutrality, and this was the main reason for this delay in this application coming before the committee, the development with potentially up to 68 occupants would increase water consumption on the site. Calculations have been provided and verified to establish likely water consumption per occupant. The precautionary approach has been adopted as required by Natural England, and additional water can be provided by water savings from the existing Crawley Homes properties. An appropriate assessment's been prepared and agreed by Natural England, and the development is considered to be water neutral, set out in detail in the officers' report. As I stated at the beginning of my presentation, additional representations have been received. The officer report summarised all the representations received before its publication on the 14th of August and is considered to have addressed all those points raised within the planning considerations. As I say, 3 further letters were received and I understand were circulated directly to members of the Planning Committee, and I'll provide a response to those points raised where I consider they haven't been covered off in the published report. So the first point is on notifications. The statutory requirement for publicity for an application of this type is for a press notice to be published in the local paper and a site notice to be displayed, and this was carried out. In addition, over and above what is necessary, the case officer sent 2 letters to the immediate adjoining neighbours at 10 Ifield Road and 5 Ifield Road. All those who made representations on this application have been notified of the committee date, and in this case, due to water neutrality, there has been a delay between the submission and the determination of the application, and occupants may have changed during this time. The planning fee paid for the application was correct. In terms of the clarity of the application, it's always been to increase the number of occupants to 68 persons. There is a current restriction on the HMO use to 36, and other supporting documentation on the file relating to other sites relates primarily to the water neutrality evidence, where other hostels are referenced in terms of their water consumption. There was a query raised about room sizes and the misrepresentation of these. She made clear there's no adopted planning guidance on the size of hostel rooms and no published standards. And it would be this guidance, if it existed, that would be relevant consideration for the Planning Committee tonight. This is a matter for the hostel operator, who must ensure that the building complies with fire and building regulation requirements and not the local planning authority. The HMO standards stated in this representation are irrelevant, as the proposal is for a different use, which is a hostel, and the standards quoted are not applicable. I'm advised that the hostel room sizes are larger than other hostels in the borough. There are no enforceable standards under the planning regulations. Matters of overcrowding are matters for the hostel operator, and this is covered by other legislation, such as the building regulations, which is separate from planning. And room 27 is proposed to be a 4-person flat, and the space is considered usable. I've got a couple of photographs of room 27, which people might want to see. So this is room 27. So this is a 4-person flat. There was some concern, I think, about the ceiling height in one of the room parts of the room, which is obviously got some scaling in it. However, this is quite a high floor-to-ceiling height on this, as this building was previously an office, so it's got a higher ceiling height than perhaps a residential dwelling. So this is the 4-person room that's being referenced. The applicants have also provided a letter from the fire service in connection with the building regulation application, which would expand occupancy of the building to 68 persons, saying it's capable of compliance with internal modifications. I say such modifications aren't matters for the committee, but the committee can be assured that the building is capable of being safely converted. Final point was the statutory duty in conservation areas. The local planning authority has considered these duties as part of the consideration of the application. I've referenced that already in the earlier report. It was not considered that a heritage impact assessment was required in this case, as no physical changes are proposed to the external appearance of the building. The council's heritage advisor was consulted, and her comments, which relate principally to the need for a cycle store, are addressed in the report. There's no mandatory requirement for all applications to produce a heritage statement if they're in a conservation area. There is also nothing in the policy which seeks to restore appropriate commercial use to a conservation area. There is no impact upon the character of the conservation area, in terms of the change of use from the hostel, HMO to the hostel, one sort of accommodation to the other. And finally, just a comment on antisocial behaviour. A few comments about that in the recent reps. It's alleged there's been a persistent antisocial behaviour since the building was purchased by the council. There is no substantive evidence provided to support this statement. I would emphasise that the site is located in a busy town centre location. A lot of people use Ifield Road. Nearby businesses use the pavement and sit outside for seating and drinking and eating. There is no evidence to directly tie such antisocial behaviour to the application site. The photograph of the police vehicles, I have been advised, relates to an incident that took place nearby, and the victim sought assistance from a resident at the hostel. This crime incident was not triggered by the hostel use. Late night vehicles using the street is also a common occurrence in a town centre location, with lots of nearby takeaways, dropping and collecting off of town centre users. It's a good place to pick up and collect for the town centre, and any parking infringements would be the subject of civil enforcement. It's not considered any additional noise from residents would noticeably add to the levels of activity that currently take place in the street and surrounding areas. And the applicant states the premises is actively managed and addressed. However, the management of the building and occupants is a matter for the applicant and not the local planning authority. So, in conclusion, the officer's recommendation is to permit the application as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jean, for your wonderful presentation. There are 4 speakers registered in regard to this item. We will begin with the objectors. Please, may David Taylor come to the speakers' table. You have 3 minutes to speak, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you. If you could just turn the microphone on using the button with the little face on it.
That one there. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll start again. Councillors, my name is David. I run Crow, a coffee shop on the High Street. I'm here because I cannot stay silent while its heart is being gutted. You are being asked to approve a 68-bed hostel at 69 Ifield Road, the only hostel application in the borough since 2023, right in the High Street conservation area. Your own policies demand these streets, these historic buildings and these alleyways be protected from inappropriate development and the High Street's historic trading function be restored. Working around the corner from this building, I see firsthand what already happens at this property. People loitering in pyjamas, smoking, drinking, taking drugs. I've even had to intervene when an argument between one of your residents spilled out and ended up in my shop, and I had to protect 2 of Crawley's own council staff, including Adam, your housing officer here. Cars pulling in to the end, at the dead end of Ifield Road, idling next to the building and turning around at all hours. General disturbance and antisocial behaviour makes that area feel unsafe. And that's with 27 rooms. What do you think will happen when you push this to 68 occupants? It will get worse. It will get much worse. But beyond lived experience, this proposal fails against your own local plan. Policy CL1, the neighbourhood principle. Development must protect neighbourhood structure and support neighbourhood centres. This hostel overloads a small, constrained, dead-end street and damages the viability and the success of the High Street as a trading centre. Policy DD1, normal requirements of development. New development must protect and enhance Crawley's distinctive character. Dropping a high-intensity hostel into the
30 seconds left.
into conservation area does the opposite. And then finally, policy HA1, the heritage assets. Great weight must be given to conserving conservation areas, yet here there is no heritage or conservation impact study at all. The failure alone makes approval legally vulnerable.
5 seconds.
And then there are the basic errors. Occupancy. Would it be possible to continue for another minute or so?
No, minute is too long, I'm afraid. Sorry, we've got other speakers.
Okay. Could I just make one point, possibly?
Very quick then, very
sure.
quick.
I would like to remind you of the High Court ruling in the Epping Asylum Hotel case. The court was clear. Strict enforcement of planning controls is of particular importance when inappropriate accommodation use threatens the local community.
Okay,
If you wade through with this
Thank you,
without
Mr. Taylor.
Okay, thank you.
Can I please invite Russell Ellison to please come to the speaker's table? You also have 3 minutes to speak, Russell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Russell Ellison. I am the Housing Enabling and Development Manager for Crawley Borough Council, and I'm here representing the applicant. I'm pleased to be able to address this committee to provide further context in respect of the intended use and management of the 629 Ifield Road as a hostel. As a stockholding authority, Crawley Borough Council is the largest landlord in the borough. We currently have over 8,000 tenants of properties under our management, and in addition to 12 other hostels that we manage in the borough for use as temporary accommodation. We pride ourselves in being a responsible landlord, and this has recently been validated following a rigorous inspection by the regulator of social housing. We were awarded the second highest rating by the regulator. Excuse me. Accordingly, we are also a very visible landlord, as we are the council, and we can be easily contacted where necessary. And we are gearing up to provide the appropriate level of management, excuse me, I've got a frog, as we already do across our hostel stock, as we would do in the case of this hostel. I must add that by accommodating small families in this hostel, this actually de-risks the scheme, as it is usually the high concentration of single occupancies that proves to be more challenging to manage. So including couples and small families within this hospital will improve the overall balance of the occupancy within this occupation, within this hostel. Furthermore, the number of 68 is simply the sum of the maximum number that can be achieved within this building. And this is to ensure that we're not in risk of breaching planning in the future, and to allow for this eventuality should it ever arise. However, even if this eventuality does arise, it is unlikely that this will be for any sustained period of time. Excuse me. The standard of this occupation will be a vast improvement on what... thank you, Julie. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. The standard of this accommodation will be a vast improvement on what the intended occupants would otherwise endure in bed and breakfast and other rooms that the council would otherwise need to access from the market. Finally, the hostels of this nature provide an important pathway towards accessing more secure and permanent accommodation, and plays a vital role in providing security until such time as more permanent accommodation can be provided for these people to whom the council has a duty to house. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Russell. Now I would like to invite Councillor Irvine to please come to the speaker's table. And you also have 3 minutes to speak, Councillor Irvine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I doubt that I'll take my 3 minutes, and I did think long and hard about coming here tonight and taking up the committee's time, because I know from all the discussions we've had on the council that all councillors are aware of the extent of homelessness in Crawley and the effects on the finances of the council. Some time ago, the council voted unanimously, if I remember rightly, to declare a housing emergency in Crawley, and an emergency that has not gone away. So I'd like to make the following points in support of this application. Firstly, the Crawley homeless applicants to be housed there will be owed a housing duty by the council. In other words, they could be our friends, they could be our neighbours, they could be our family. They're certainly members of the Crawley community. 2, at the moment, we often have to house families outside Crawley because of a lack of suitable accommodation. This can be very disruptive, especially for children. This proposal means that we'll be able to house many more families close to their original homes and schools. 3, as regards antisocial behaviour or the possibility of it, the hostel will be managed by a dedicated hostels team and visited by a dedicated officer at least once a day. There will also be strict tenancy conditions. 4, at present, we frequently have to use expensive nightly paid bed and breakfast accommodation for homeless families. Because there are so many local authorities competing for accommodation, this drives the cost up and is costing the council a great deal of money, as I'm sure we're all aware. This hostel, when fully occupied, has the potential to save the council £834,000 per year over nightly paid temporary accommodation. That would make a very big difference to our already stretched council finances. In conclusion, Madam Chair, this proposal will mark an improvement in the lot of many homeless Crawley families and also an improvement in our council budget. For those reasons, I sincerely hope the committee will vote in favour of the officer's recommendation to permit this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. That was a very heartfelt speech. And finally, I would like to invite Councillor Jones. Please come to the table. And you also have 3 minutes to speak, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to the Planning Committee this evening. We have a housing emergency in this borough. There is, as the Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor Ian Irvine, has indicated, a need for more temporary accommodation places to meet demand and reduce the numbers of residents we would otherwise have to house out of the borough. By bringing forward this part of the existing building for full occupancy through this change of use, as was always intended, rather than sit vacant, we will be achieving something important. Now, some of the objections, Chair, relating to the effect on the conservation area, but this is not substantially affected by this development. There are no external modifications to the building other than the addition of some additional bicycle storage facilities and some extra investment in greenery and shrubs, etc., to adhere to our new local plan policy on urban greening. The objections largely seem to be that the temporary accommodation being brought into use will somehow impact to the detriment of the conservation area because it will bring more people living in the area. This is a curious argument. Many of our other conservation areas are primarily residential. In fact, I'm afraid to say, Chair, it appears to me that the underlying assumption of at least some of those objections, spoken or unspoken, comes across that such residents will somehow lower the tone of the area, which, if that is the case, is untrue and pretty insulting. Temporary accommodation is there for people who need support getting back on their feet. This can be for many valid reasons, such as being given a no-fault eviction by their landlord or through relationship breakdown and affordable accommodation not being readily available to them. Anyone who wants to allege otherwise simply do not understand who is in need of temporary accommodation in Crawley at the moment, which could be residents' friends, neighbours or family through no fault of their own. Many of them will have full-time jobs, and indeed there could be some economic benefit to having more residents nearby who wish to use local shops and services. Anyone who says this won't be used for local people is not accurate. Allegations of trouble simply cannot be laid at the door of this facility. The beginning of Ifield Road, as has been mentioned, is a major pedestrian route for people out of the town centre, and virtually none of the incidents possibly being referred to involved any resident past or present of 6 to 9 Ifield Road. There has been one high-profile incident in which an assault victim was treated by an ambulance outside of the hostel and the police attended the scene, and information provided by the hostel's team confirmed that the victim was not a resident of the hostel and the incident actually occurred at in Church Walk. The victim sought help from a friend who was a resident of the hostel who contacted the emergency services. In fact, we've had only one external complaint of antisocial behaviour at the property since it's opened, and there will be daily management of the site at the CBC hostel, as has been said. It is rare for me to address this committee, Chair, but on this occasion I urge you to support the Planning Officer's recommendation to permit. Thank you.
And thank you to all the speakers who have spoken. We will now move on to the debate. Committee members should raise their hand if they wish to speak. The officer will respond to queries one by one. And now I open the floor to any questions anyone may have, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members don't seem to be rushing to speak. So I have a couple of questions, but also some comments to make as well. Firstly, we've heard from the two councillors, the leader and the cabinet member, the case for the policy, and the case for the policy is strong. We all recognise and know the need for temporary accommodation within the town. But we as a committee, we are the planning committee, so we need to separate the policy and the planning and look at this solely in planning terms. And sometimes those can align with policy and sometimes they may not. In terms of the questions that I've got, am I right? Did I hear correctly that it is already now being used as a hostel, but that the numbers have still been kept to within the number of beds that the original or the previous planning application allowed, which was 36. So I'm having a nod. So that's answered yes. Thank you. So that answers that question. So therefore, this is a retrospective planning application, but the council have kept within the spirit, if you like, of the previous application in terms of the number of beds, but not in terms of the change of use. So okay, because I know sometimes committee members can be quite unhappy when there are, I forget the term now, sorry, retrospective applications from elsewhere. So we should certainly uphold that ourselves. But I accept what has happened here, and we have abided by the number. There are pluses and minuses for this application. Firstly, the pluses. I welcome the fact that there is no change to the facade of the building. I think that is welcome, and that there's apart from and actually the landscaping as well will be an improvement to that area and better for those residents. That is a plus. And certainly in terms of the policy, I can see the advantages in the intensification of the use of the site in terms of policy terms. Where I think we have some issues around planning is whether the number of, we did hear that would be an absolute maximum of 68, so we need to recognise that, and that it would not always be that use, is that whether at times a near doubling of the number of occupants has a material difference to inside the property and to the wider area as a whole. And also there's no internal communal area, so the units are essentially self-contained. And the report says that Goss Park is like 8 minutes away. Well, I don't think that's pretty ideal for children at all. And I do accept, and this leads to my next question, that this is temporary accommodation. Therefore, it's never going to be to the same standard that you would want for permanent accommodation. But the answer might be sort of how long's a piece of string. But how long do we determine what temporary accommodation is, given the challenges that we have in terms of housing? Are we talking what is likely, and I appreciate this might be difficult to quantify, what is likely to be the average length of stay? Because I think we need to factor that in in terms of how suitable we think this property would be for a larger number of applicants. So that's a question that I've got there around how long do we envisage that people will actually be staying there before they're able to move on to permanent accommodation. And a concern I do have is car parking. So the existing use says that we should and it's in a planning policy, we should have 14 spaces, and we don't have any. We're now going to have, again with planning policy, that it should be 21 and no parking at all. And indeed, the makeup of the nature of the people staying there, if you have more couples, might suggest that you would have I appreciate this is a sustainable location in the town centre, but the change in the makeup of the people staying there, and that you'd have more couples, may well suggest that you would have more people who would own or who would want to own a vehicle, and therefore create that difficulty in terms of a lack of parking for those people there. I'll stop there. I probably will have some more points later on, but I think I've got one question there that if, around, and I appreciate it's difficult, but I think it makes a difference in terms of how long we envisage people will be staying, as to how suitable an increase in the number of people staying there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. I will now pass on to Jean, who will answer all your questions and concerns.
I'll try to. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, the first question I think was how long is temporary? It's a very good question, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. It's not really something that necessarily we could control through any sort of planning condition or control that may be imposed should planning permission be granted this evening. I think all we've got is the confidence that it is temporary accommodation. These rooms are quite small, that they're instead effectively of a hotel room or another temporary accommodation outside the borough. So I don't think it's certainly anyone's intention to leave a family in this sort of accommodation any longer than is absolutely necessary. But I don't have any definitive answer on how long temporary is. I suppose it just depends on the availability of other housing provision and how quickly they can be moved through. And in terms of car parking, the advice I've had from the hostels team is that they would not automatically be assigning anyone an occupancy of one of these rooms if they did have a vehicle. Again, that's a management issue rather than a planning issue. But also, I think it's worth bearing in mind that you've got Orchard Street car park quite close by if someone did end up with a vehicle. But also, it's a very accessible location. You're right in the town centre here, near the bus station, the train station. Everything's within walking distance. So I would think it's a very suitable area for, using active transport options as well, instead of a car. As I say, the applicant says that they won't be encouraging vehicles to the site. And again, there's no, if you like, vehicle access through to the back of the building. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, you'll see that the access bridge through, there's actually a sort of barrier, so it isn't possible to park a car here. So it's very much intended as a site for residents without vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard?
Well, already I didn't expect to be next. Sorry. I had a very interesting site visit with officers, and I've got lots of questions from the site visit, and maybe they've been covered or not. One of my concerns was the fire escapes, and I know we talked about it, and I know the fire department, it's a buildings regulation issue. There are going to be an awful lot of people in there, in the two buildings. Many of them will be children, and the fire escape is across that little bridge into the other building, and then there potentially is one fire escape, and that does concern me, and it is a big concern, because as a mother I would be quite frightened if I was on the third floor, the fire alarm's going, my children are screaming, crying, all sorts going on. And I do think that we really need to ensure that it is safe for the families that are going to be there. And I want that assurance that we will be looking at the potential of a fire risk. And going on from that, at 5.20 in the report, it says it's not really acceptable for children on the long term, and it's only temporary. And obviously you can't define what temporary is. And when we were going round, I asked about the what is currently the disused car park bin store thing. I realise it's going to be landscape, but can we ensure that there are benches and trees and flowers and things? Because if children are there, they're going to want to sit outside, possibly on a sunny day, and get fresh air in the local, in their building that they're living in. So I really would like that condition clarified and made more child friendly. See, I'm all over the place. Yeah, going back to the when I was talking to the person who showed us round, it's often going to be accommodation for vulnerable mothers with small children, and I do have a little bit of concern about the bathroom situation. If you've got young children in the middle, like wanting to go for a wee, because they do, you're going to have to come out of your little room and go down the corridor. You don't know, you're going to have to leave one in the flat, take one to the toilet. And I wonder if we could have some sort of separation of single men or whatever from vulnerable family female units. I don't know whether that's possible, but I don't know whether it's even a planning issue. But I do have that concern. Right, and much has been said about this being for families, for local people. And I just wondered if we can have some sort of condition, because what I would be very concerned about going forward is, what can we do to prevent, the Home Office coming forward and changing, saying, oh, look, there's a big building with lots of potential accommodation. Is there a condition or something that we can put in to make sure that it is used for local families who are homeless? And I know that Councillor Jones and Councillor Irvine have stressed that it is for families of local people, but I wondered if there is a condition we can add to the report somehow to ensure that that would be the case going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Jaggard, thank you. There were some very good points in there. Thank you. I'll pass you over to Jean now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the first question was about the fire escape and the level of access, and wanting some assurances that the fire risk will be looked at. I think it's really important to note that fire safety is not a planning consideration. It's covered under a different legislation. It's covered under the building regulations, and it will be completely looked at and required to be compliant under those regulations. So we have to be really careful that we don't overlap or replicate our considerations or cloud the waters, that those requirements will be under the building regulations. Since I saw you on Thursday, we have had a letter from the fire brigade that came in today that said that they'd seen some drawings which indicatively showed that the increased capacity and that the building was capable of being converted. So I can give you that reassurance. But it is a matter for a different legislative process, and we do have to keep the two separate. So obviously the hostel can't operate without building regulation approval. I'm sure there are all sorts of risks and liabilities if that were to happen, so it would be covered. And similarly, all the layout and the arrangements for means of escape, and how those stairwells work and those links work is a matter, all those internal alterations in effect are a matter for the building control team to sort out, and the building safety officers. Similarly, the issue with the internal layout and how bathrooms and rooms are allocated is not a planning consideration. We can't put any sort of controls on that. It's a matter for the hostel operators to decide, how that building is managed and who is allocated bathrooms or how the facilities are arranged. So I'm afraid that's also beyond the scope of the planning committee. In terms of the rear amenity space, there's a couple of photographs just here. So on the left-hand side, you've got the view as you turn through the arch and look towards Asda's and westwards, and you see the Ifield Road in the background. And then the other side, the right-hand side, is the view looking back towards the High Street. And I know we obviously there's need for bin provision and cycle provision, but we did discuss the urban greening factor and requirement for landscaping. So one suggestion might be to amend one of the conditions to pick up the concerns you've got, Councillor Jaggard, with regard to perhaps providing seating and a little bit of landscaping somewhere to make the environment a bit more pleasant for families, or who maybe just want to get outside and the children to run around for a short while. So one suggestion I've got is that we would tweak condition, let's have a look at it, be condition 5. So it's where it talks about a plan showing space for the rear external area, refuse storage, general waste, recycling, and provision laid out as external amenity space for residents. So we'd get some sort of provision within that condition to maybe improve the external environment for the new residents. So that would be my proposal for that, and that is planning consideration. And the condition regarding local people, again, I think that's a matter for the applicant. The applicant is Crawley Borough Council and has ultimately control over who it houses. So I think that, again, that condition would be ultra vires. It wouldn't be enforceable. Again, as I say, the applicant is the local authority or is the council. So they're going to be working with people off their own housing list. If the building was sold on, we wouldn't be able to argue that planning condition on any future applicant if they decided to use it for somebody else. So again, I don't think that's an enforceable planning condition. So I'm afraid I can't support that.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Ashraf, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few comments and a question as well. I completely understand why some of the local people and businesses have raised concerns about this application. Issues like the character of the conservation area, the impact on nearby businesses, and the suitability of the site for families are all very important and have been carefully considered. At the same time, Crawley faces a serious challenge in providing temporary accommodation for residents who become homeless. This proposal is not for an asylum hotel. It is to help meet our local duty to provide safe, short-term housing for people in need. The planning assessment shows that the building can be managed without causing harm to neighbors, and that key issues like parking, waste, water use, and conservation area impact can be addressed through conditions. While the accommodation is not suitable for long-term family living, it does provide a much-needed safety net in the short term. My question is, how many residents are currently in temporary accommodation across Crawley? And what pressure would this development help relieve? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashraf. I will ask Jean to answer your question. Thank you.
I'm really sorry, Chair, I don't know the answer to that. That'd be one for the applicants, I'm afraid. All I know is that we have acute housing need in the borough. We've had the housing emergency declared, and there's an awful lot of people on waiting lists. So this is going to, help alleviate those pressures. Thank you.
Thank you. And now can I ask Councillor Patel, please, for their question?
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of questions. The first one I think is straightforward. There was a comment that the maximum is unlikely and actually average or most of the time will be less than that. Is the recommendation based on that, or is it based on the assumption of the maximum number of the time? I guess that's the first question. And then the second question is, how does this compare? Obviously, 68 occupants within this plan, follows the rules and regulations. But how does it compare to other temporary accommodation in Crawley? Is it a lowering of the standard, or is it in line with the high standards that have been set? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Jean, if you could answer the question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Patel. Yeah, the maximum 68 was based on the maximum number of beds that the hostel could accommodate if every single room was occupied to its fullest extent. I think the challenge probably the applicant has is that they just don't know which rooms are available and what order families come in. So they're working with the worst case scenario there. But obviously if you've got a 4-person room or a family, they need a 4-space room. It might be that they are in that bed space, but it'd be the absolute maximum that the building could accommodate. And the building regulations and all the other water neutrality considerations have all been factored to that absolute upper limit. I think it's highly unlikely that it would be occupied at that level, because that would have to assume that they'd have a perfect fit for every single room, which I should think, hopefully, with the comings and goings and it being a temporary nature, wouldn't be the case all the time. And in terms of how it compares with other proposals, I have to say I haven't dealt with any hostels recently, but when I did go around the tour with the hostel manager, he was saying that the rooms were of a comparable size to the other hostels that they operate within the borough. So this sort of accommodation is at the sort of at the council's normal standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton, for your question.
Oh God, green. Thank you, Chair. I think before I start, I should say that although I'm a member of the current member of the Cabinet, this decision to, I assume, acquire this property was actually made way before I got on the council in February 23, and I was elected to the council until May 24. So therefore, I will only be looking at planning grounds only. I've considered all the representations and from both the applicant and the objections, and I thank you for everyone who's turned up tonight. And I've looked at the portal, and I also went to the site visit last Thursday with Councillors Bidwell and Jaggard, and a lot of my observations are also based on what I saw on that particular day. First of all, on good news, I would certainly support Councillor Jaggard on the point of we're looking at biodiversity by making the garden area far nicer. It should actually be a benefit, not having any vehicular access. And in terms of car parking, I know the council, in my other hat, has got long stay car parking at the Alter Street car park, so that should be opportune. If users want to use that for car parking, they can do so. There's also been a lot of talk about retrospective. I would say that, to be fair to applicants, and I won't say it's the Borough Council, it's the applicants, it's retrospective because of water neutrality. I believe the application was put in around the time it was before its first use in December 23, and it's water neutrality that is put things over. But the applicant is called to a council. I know Councillor Jaggard has just mentioned whether the Home Office would take it over. Well, the only other authority would be taking this over, I'd imagine, would be any new unitary authority. And I'd imagine that unless we build, and hopefully we'll build more and more homes, there will be housing needs for people in this local community, and those needs will have to be taken care of. And I assume that I was a councillor in the 90s, and we had hostels then, and we had hostels now, and it does seem a good way for dealing with hostels on a planning basis. I should also say, I noticed in 2.1, it talks about there's a far high level of occupation. Well, actually, it is and it isn't, because what we actually saw on Thursday at the site visit was there's 9 empty rooms. The 36 maximum occupancy at the moment is in the 18 existing rooms, and so it's basically filling up those 9 rooms up to the capacity of each room. And although that sounds quite a raise between 36 and 68, as we've seen, there was at least one 4-bed, and I think I did try and keep tally, a few 3 beds and the rest are 2 beds. And yes, compared to what you expect in other areas, they may be smaller, but I am assured, and we're offered the opportunity to go to other places, other hostels in the town centre and beyond, to look at the size of other buildings, and we were reassured that this was a relatively good size compared to other places. And obviously it was offices before, so you know there's been some looking at that. So I have every confidence that although it's not ideal in what we expect on a day-to-day basis, it has got cooking facilities there, and a lot of the accommodation, although they say 2 people, may be for 1 person and two young children, etc. So I think it's well within the capabilities of that particular hostel. If I just move on. The difference is that with the 9 extra extra homes, rooms being occupied, they will be for families within housing need, as the applicant has told us. And that could be because of parental evictees, domestic violence, and breaking up of relationships and sexual unnoticed. And it's not, the thing about homelessness, it could affect all of us. We're all 1 or 2 steps away from homelessness. And this is a way of the applicant meeting his statutory duties. And I think it's interesting that in 2015, the application for the original HMO, for the original 36, was actually done on delegated powers on the approved delegated scheme for officers, because it was seen as a minor event. So you could argue that although it's gone up from 36 to 68, in fact, it's going through committee, we're discussing it now, we're looking at the pros and cons, and also, as hostels are what they call sui generis, sorry about my Latin's not very good, there is more management controls, both for the tenants, for the landlords visiting, the owner of the properties visiting, and also for various tenancy conditions. So there should be extra controls, which you wouldn't get if you kept it with an HMO with 36. Obviously, there's no service standards, but I think in the end you have to compare like with like, and we're not comparing people who have been in 2 or 3 bedroom houses. We're comparing people who've been in hotels, B&Bs, and spread across. And in terms of, I know it's a high street conservation area, but it's very near to town, and it will give amenities. There's parks nearby, and funny enough, when Crawley Newtown was built, one of the reasons they built West Green neighbourhood is because they didn't have enough facilities in the neighbourhood while the shops were being built, and actually built them by the town centre, so people from local areas could use the town centre. And I would say this probably would apply in this case. Finally, I would just say that there's been a lot of discussion about antisocial behaviour, and understand that it's a busy town and lots of things happening. It is interesting that in terms of planning, the police were asked, and I know at first they asked to express some objections, but those objections were withdrawn. And I have asked on the site visit, and I will ask again, do we know on what grounds that they were asked? I actually did see some antisocial behaviour on the visit, and I can assure you that with the age of the people who's involved, there was certainly nothing to do with the residents. So I'm not denying there's not antisocial behaviour within the town centre area, with the nighttime economy as well, but I'm not sure you can lay that all on the feet of this. So on the whole, I would think about, I can see why the applicants put it in, and I would support the recommendations. I don't know if I'm unable to do that at this stage.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hilton. Did you also have a question to ask?
Yeah, the only question I had at this stage was whether we had heard from the police or not.
Thank you. So I'll just ask Jean if you'd like to add to it. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the police did comment originally on the application, I think raised an objection, but throughout this process, they've now withdrawn that. I haven't got any details of on what basis, but my guess is that when obviously all our comments go onto the website, the applicant may well have spoken or given some reassurances to them on different matters. But as I say, as it stands at the moment, the police's position is they've got no objection to the application. Thank you.
Okay, next is Councillor McWarley, please.
Thank you. Looking at item 5.17, where it says that the building currently complies with the council standards to be operated as a 27-bedroom, so they got it right then. My worry is cramming some more beds in these rooms is, well, I don't know, because it's like double the occupancy. And like Councillor Jago was saying, you know, the health and safety, there's lots of kids running around with their mothers and fathers maybe, and also there's no more bathroom spaces or toilets, so maybe they'll have to add some more in there, I don't know, but it's too crammed. So my question is this it? Won't they be adding any more bathrooms or toilets in there, having doubled the number of occupants in the place?
Thank you, Councillor McWarley. I'll let Jean answer your question.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry, knocked my keyboard. Yeah, obviously the application that came in 2015 was for a house in multiple occupation, and that met the standards for a house in multiple occupation for 27 bedrooms and 36 people. And there were planning standards for that at that point. This is now proposed to be a hostel, and there's no standards for that. The bathrooms and the washing facilities are shared. While perhaps that's not ideal, again, it has to be considered against the fact that there aren't any planning standards that we can apply, and that there are facilities on each floor for the occupants. So although it might seem more cramped, and it undoubtedly is, there could be up to 68 occupants. This is a different planning use, and we have to assess it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, we have Councillor Bidwell to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as pointed out earlier, there is part of the argument that isn't fully regarding the increase to the number of accommodated residents, but rather the alleged behaviour of some residents. It's been mentioned that this is a space mainly for families. I suppose in relation to Councillor Jaggard's earlier question, can I ask what kind of vetting process, prerequisites or restrictions are in place in order to be placed here? Also, for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not sure if there was a misconception at all, but is this hostel exclusive to Crawley residents? Finally, following Councillor Hilton's point about the police withdrawing their objection, the report states that it was due to further information being provided. Can I ask what further information this might be, and if this isn't known, would it be possible to seek further clarification as the local authority?
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. Jean, your turn.
So I'm just trying to look up, see if someone's given me any information. The vetting process, again, isn't a planning consideration. It's a management issue for the occupant or the applicants. I've got no direct information about what process that goes through. There clearly must be people in housing need, and they would be Crawley residents off the housing list, one would assume. As I say, I haven't got any specific information, and it isn't something the planning committee can kind of take too much consideration on, other than it's for local people. In terms of the advice that the police got, I'm not party to that information. As far as the officers are concerned, planning officers, they're entitled to change their mind and withdraw their objection. They didn't request any further information or controls from the planning authority. They did that unconditionally. So we don't know what information was shared, what assurances, if any, were given. But as far as the planning authority concerned, we are satisfied that they have no objection, and we should be considering it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Crowe again.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to come back. The need is very strong for increased temporary accommodation in the town. That case is very clear indeed in policy terms. But in planning terms, I remain concerned about the lack of amenity space for children, and the fact that we be introducing more children into, but arguably you would need more amenity space for them, and the lack of amenity space is a concern for me. I do have a further question. As we know, this application is to increase the maximum usage for temporary accommodation. And I'm just going to deviate slightly, and then it'll become clear why. About 3 years ago, the council brought in a new planning policy around HMOs, where in certain most locations where we've got townhouses within the town, if we reached a certain level of HMO, then there would be a different process for a planning process for people to go through, because, and I recall at the time, because changing family use homes to HMOs changed the nature and feel of an area, of a neighbourhood, and that's why the council brought that policy in. Now, this is an increasing, potentially nearly doubling of people in temporary accommodation, but we also have quite nearby another building that has a significant number of people who are temporarily staying, if I can put it like that. It's not what we would traditionally call temporary accommodation, but the net effect is that they are there temporarily, as are indeed the people who are currently at 6 to 9 Ifield Road, and we would be increasing that number of people who are staying within that area temporarily. So my question is it a planning consideration for increasing the numbers of people staying temporarily in an area, if you like, in temporary accommodation, if that becomes a significant number of people who are either in temporary accommodation or staying in a facility that is, if you like, where people are staying temporary, in terms of changing the nature and feel of the area. And I referenced the HMOs as a comparison. So really my question is it a planning consideration or not, what I've just raised?
Councillor Crowe, could you answer that question, please?
I think hostels, by their very nature, people are in temporary accommodation, temporary use. They are coming and going. There are other buildings in the area that are being used for temporary uses, some of which planning system has no control over, particularly the hotels at the moment. I suppose it's a concern perhaps that they're fairly close proximity to this site. However, I think we have to consider the fact that you've got a use here that is being applied for lawfully, that there can be planning controls over, in the sense that you can control the number of occupants, and you can potentially improve the rear amenity space and the environment around, and make it a suitable standard. So, I also think you have to take into account the character of the area. So, for HMOs, for example, where there were Article 4 directions that have been applied in certain areas, perhaps a furnace green, where there's been a sort of a planning change of use of those family houses to a large number of rows of terraces, perhaps with maybe young professionals living in there, that has altered the character of a perhaps a quieter area, quieter street. So I think in this case, you have to think about the context as well. And I would argue that we've got a much more mixed character here in the town centre, where there are a diversity of uses, and it's a much more lively area. And although there are other sort of challenges and temporary uses in the area, I don't necessarily think this is incompatible with the character of the the high street and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other members wish to speak? Councillor Hilton?
Yeah, just on
Very
Councillor
quickly.
Crow's last point, we are talking about hostels as a separate item for planning, and I'm not sure the comparison with HMOs is fair. And actually, if you took it one step further, you might start to ask why we've got residents in town centres. And one of the best things about Crawley in the last few years was that Crawley is far more vibrant because there's far more residents in the town centre than there were even 10 years ago. So there's always a downside of the more people coming into town centres, but at the same time, there's also an upside. So I think it's a quid pro quo.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton, for your views. Now that everyone had a... Yes, of course, you may.
Just before we move on, I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Jaggard's possible amendment. Before I do that, Jean, is there anything else that any further information you wanted to add or anything you needed to say at this point?
No, thank you. I can just read out the proposed reworded condition, if that helps. So hopefully you'll pick up the concerns closely Councillor Crowe and Councillor Jaggard raised about rear amenity space. So it's just an amendment to wording of proposed condition 5. So it should read, the hostel shall not be occupied by more than 36 persons until details have been provided on a plan showing space within the rear external area for the provision of refuse storage for general waste and recycling, and provision laid out as external amenity space for residents in accordance with the required standards. Such details shall be submitted to and agreed by the local authority in writing. The approved details shall thereafter be retained for the lifetime of the development. Thank you.
Councillor Jaggard, are you satisfied with that amendment? Are you happy to move that? Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Thank you. I'll now ask the committee members if there is any dissent to that amendment to the recommendation. If there's no dissent, then that will form part of the original recommendation. Is there any dissent to that amendment? Okay, so that amendment has been adapted into that condition.
Thank you. Now that everyone had a chance to speak, we will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the vice chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. All those against? And all those abstaining? Thank you. So recommendation 5 has been approved. So application CR/2022-0447/FUL has been permitted. Thank you. And before we go, I would like to thank Councillor Irwin for his very passionate speech. I think that was really good. Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Okay, so item number 6 is we will move on to agenda item 6, planning application CR 2022/0448/FUL, St Wilfrid's Catholic School, Southgate. Please can the planning officer introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to St Wilfrid's Catholic School in Southgate. This is sorry, it's quite zoomed out, but this just kind of gives you a flavour for the whole site. So the school is accessed at the bottom here at the south via St Wilfrid's Way. As you come up, there's a large car park here. Can you see my cursor? Sorry, it's hard to see, I know. And the school building is set behind the car park, laid out in a horseshoe-style shape. To the west is the main school playing field, and then you've got Crawley Avenue far beyond to the west, and Goffs Park wraps around it to the north and east. And to the south are residential properties in St Augustine Road. So this is the proposed site plan, and the proposal is for 14 classrooms in a detached block which is linked by a glazed walkway, glazed bridge. I'll show you a better plan, you'll see that in a minute. It is 2-storey with a flat roof. It's located to the far north of the existing school buildings. There's a small area of hard standing / sort of informal play area, which it would occupy a bit of. Said Goffs Park is across to the east and the north, and then to the west here in the school grounds you've got a sort of a small pond and a area of woodland. This just shows a more zoomed in view. It's been rotated, so this is north and this is east. So this just shows the ground floor layout, which is 7 classrooms with associated facilities in the form of staff room, office, WCs. The link bridge is just here, which connects you to the main school building. You've also got an external staircase as a fire escape. Oops, sorry. So at St Wilfrid School, the levels change significantly as you travel to the north. So this is the lower ground floor of the building, and there's a bit of an undercroft, so they're utilising that for external storage area. So that's the lower ground floor, and then I showed you the proposed ground floor. I'll just quickly show you again. So again, the 7 classrooms, staff room, office, link bridge, external staircase, and then the first floor is relatively similar layout, other than I think there's an additional larger staff room instead of an office and a store. And then proposed roof plan, it's a flat roof building. You've got solar panels on the roof, standard flat roof building. And then in terms of the elevations, this is the east and west elevations. It follows the same materials as the existing school building, so a reddish brick with grey windows, grey sort of rendered panels in between. A glazed bridge, which there's a couple of other glazed bridges on the rest of the school building, so that it all sort of ties in with what's already there. And then just one last plan, which just shows you the bookends of the building, which literally just either end of the building. And in terms of photos, so this is the where the extension would be located. So the bridge would come out from this window. Really, they'd make an opening in here, and the bridge would come out, and then the block would attach here. So you would lose a bit of vegetation in the form of grass and some hedges to accommodate this. And as I said, a bit of informal hard play. This again just shows you the location. This is the boundary with Goffs Park. This is the woodland within the school site. As you can see, the steps down, so you can see the sort of level changes. And then when you're looking back, that's the main school building again, where it should be attached to. This photo shows an existing link with the school hall. Again, just other angles showing the location of the extension. and then this looking back towards the east, towards Goffs Park. Yeah, just leave it on there. So in terms of the proposal and the school currently operates as a sixth form entry school, having expanded from its original 5 form entry due to a shortage of secondary school places identified by West Sussex County Council. Bulge classes were also taken in 2023 and 24, which added 30 pupils to these 2 intake years. There is also a sixth form which has capacity for 240 students with 190 currently on roll. Therefore, the total school population is 1,172, and this is expected to rise to 1,218 when the sixth form reaches its full capacity. The shift to sixth form entry has strained the teaching space, leading to the conversion of rooms and loss of core facilities to create classrooms. The proposed development will provide additional classrooms, refurbish parts of the existing building, and provide specialist teaching and facilities. So all of the pupils are currently there on site, save the small capacity with the sixth form, but it is already operating as a sixth form entry, so the existing pupils are already there. The officer report sets out that the principle of the development is supported, aligning with the MPPF requirement for school places. In terms of the highways impacts, as I said, most pupils are already on site with no increase in staff. An up-to-date travel plan is in place and highways have no objection. The extension scale, design and northern location integrates well with the site and poses no harm to residential amenity. Landscaping and biodiversity impacts are minimal, with planting proposed and secured by condition. A pond on site requires adherence to a Newt method statement, ensuring no ecological harm. While the proposal results in the loss of informal hard play space, the school retains surplus hard play areas, making the loss acceptable in this instance. Drainage and sustainability strategies are proposed with no adverse noise or air quality impacts. The report states that the scheme would be water neutral, achieved through retrofitting the existing school building, rainwater harvesting and water efficient devices in the new extension. An appropriate assessment has been completed, and Natural England agree the proposal would be water neutral, subject to the proposed mitigation as set out in the report. Overall, the proposal is considered acceptable and is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. There are no speakers registered in regard to this item, so we will move on to the debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Please raise your hands. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. On condition 5, it says no development shall take place until a dust management plan is in control during the construction and the demolition of stuff that's already there. There's an awful lot of children there, and they're going to be milling around. I'm very concerned about the dust from demolition works. It says somewhere higher up in the report about demolition and the dust. Can you explain the dust management plan? I'm not quite sure how you can manage dust when there are so many young children there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jaggard. Alex, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Chair. I think in condition 4 that's a typo because there isn't any demolition. So hopefully that alleviates your concern. I think it would manage the dust and debris during construction, but there isn't actually any demolition. So I think that was standard wording, so probably needs to be removed. So thank you.
Right, but nevertheless, construction involves dust, concrete, chemicals that are airborne with young children. They're not young children, but maturing children. I am concerned about the impact on their breathing. Thank you.
So the reason for having the dust management plan is to ensure that they adhere to the rules and regulations, so there won't be any adverse impact. There will be there's separate constructors' access down the side of the building. There will be measures put in place to ensure that there won't be any adverse impacts, which is why we need to see the dust management plan before anything starts on site. So that will ensure that there would be no adverse impacts. and the environmental health officer also had a look, and it was a precautionary approach. They didn't envisage any adverse impacts.
Thank you. Councillor Bidwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I've just been a bit slow here or not. I've had a look through and I'm not sure I may have misheard, but does it mention how long the actual development is due to take place for period-wise?
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. Alex, would you like to answer?
Thank you. I think they anticipate 2 years. Yeah.
Thank you. And now Councillor Hilton, please.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Jagger, good question about dust management. I think things have obviously moved on from now, because if we look at our next door building being demolished, I think that's a good example of how dust management must come along quite nicely. You wouldn't actually know what was going on there. You hear it, but you don't actually feel it and smell it in the air. So it was a good question, but I think we, as a committee, we've probably been reassured by that. My only comment is that obviously always a concern is loss of plane provision, but I think looking at the plans and looking at the report, particularly the table in Power 533, I think although there is obviously some loss of the playing area, it's not of great quality, and the surplus is not as a detriment to anything else, etc. So I was really grateful for the information carried in 533. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hilton, if you'd like to add anything, please, Alex. Would you like to add anything to that?
Sorry, could you, was there a question? I didn't know.
Other members have questions? Councillor Crowe, do you have anything to say? No? Oh, okay, that was good. Okay. Oh, yes, of course, Councillor.
I was just having a look at, they've got the section based on the noise pollution side of things. It does mention that all precautions and practical means are going to be taken to minimise noise disturbance. Of course, it is, it is a school. Works are going to be taking place within school hours. Do we know what kind of measures these are at all?
Yes, thank you, Alex.
I don't know specifically, but again, they're working on a school. There will be rules that they'll have to adhere to and regulations they'll have to adhere to, and even more so because it's a sensitive location. But no, I don't have the specifics.
Thank you. As there are no more speakers, we will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As the Chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, may I have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. All those against? And all those abstaining? Application CR/2022/0448/FUL has been permitted. What time? So where are we? Sorry. And now we come to our final agenda of a meeting of the evening. We will now move on to agenda item 7, Tree Preservation Order 03/2025-Trees at Lidl, Haslett Avenue East. Please can the planning officer introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to trees at the Lidl supermarket in Haslett Avenue East and considers the objection that was received to the tree preservation order that was served on the trees at the premises. As you'll see from the aerial photograph, the trees are located around the store building and the landscaping is considered important as these trees are prominent, given this is quite an urban and built-up location and on a prominent junction. So there are 3 groups of trees that are part of the order. First group, adjacent to the car park, where my cursor is now, that's G2. Another lot closer to the junction, G3, sorry. And then another group over on the eastern side, which is G1. That's just them marked up on the actual order plan there. So the trees in the order have been identified as 3 groups as per that map, and the species are identified in 4.1 of the officer's report. The objection received on behalf of Lidl relates to group G1, which are 29 Leyland cypress, which are located on the eastern boundary of the site, and the comments are attached in full in that report. So as set out in paragraph 5.4, the key concern is the size and proximity of the trees to the new external plant area, which would service the store. There are concerns about maintenance and interference to the plant and equipment and related health issues if the plant loses efficiency or there is a delay in consent for works. Trees here are shown on the photograph. I see quite a prominent group of cypress trees. Perhaps from this angle you can see a little bit better where the store building is, and the row of trees and the plant area is roughly where that blue van is on the photograph. Your officers consider there is no conflict between these trees and the operation of the plant. As set out in paragraph 6.4 of the report, the imposition of the tree preservation order doesn't preclude consent for works to trees when necessary and justified. The species type is such that if clearance pruning is needed, consent is likely to only be necessary once, as the branches are unlikely to regrow. And the arboricultural officer has already suggested that these works are unlikely to cause harm to the visual amenity. There is also guidance given in the report about tree provisions for abating nuisance. In conclusion, it's not considered that the concerns raised by the objector in G1, in relation to G1, justify the exclusion of these trees from the order, as due to the species of the trees, they are unlikely to require repeat surgery in respect of the plant, and the regulations are flexible to address any cases of nuisance. So the officer recommendation to the committee is to confirm this order without modification. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, for your presentation. There are no speakers registered in regard to this item, so we will move on to a debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Please raise your...
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, as you know, I don't have a problem with tree preservation orders, but I would like some clarification on Group G1, because when I was there having a little look, the trees are on the outside of the boundary fence. Are they, and looking at the nav map that we have, are they Crawley Borough Council trees or are they actually Lidl trees? Because they're on the outside of the fence and it looks like on the nav map that there are trees anyway.
If you'd like to answer the question, please, Jean.
Yeah, I believe the Twitton next to it is CBC land, that Twitton, so I assume there would be CBC land, but that would be my...
Just calling up the map. Looking at the map, there's a slightly strange boundary arrangement there. Lidl's almost own a squarer plot of land. I'll just put up the location plan. See that? Let's enlarge it. Sorry. Right. Over. Okay, so looking at the map here, Lidl seem to own a square, a plot of land, and the boundary line almost follows down from G1 all the way down to the road here. So some of the trees are definitely within their ownership, and others may well be amenity trees. But as I say, I think the boundary's a little unclear. I only got nav map. The land registry search came back when the order was served, came back as the ownership being Lidl's and West Sussex County Council. So we've served it based on the land registry information that was returned.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just I looked, physically looked, and the trees were on the outside of the fence. And on NavMap, it looked like it was pink, so it was our land. But regardless, I'm happy to have the TPO on whoever owns the trees. So it's not an issue. Thank you.
Would any other members wish to speak?
Just one little thing. And just please local resident brought to our attention, because I go past that particular area quite a lot, and I think the phrase I've used in recent days is you see but you look but you don't always see. So I'm really pleased they've dealt with it and we've gone with it, so it's really good.
So as there's no other speakers, we will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to confirm. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the vice chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. So could I have a show of hands for all those for? All those against? And all those abstaining? So Tree Preservation Order 03/2025 has been confirmed. Thank you. As there's no supplemental agenda, so there is no business for the committee, the meeting is now closed at 21:23. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.